Good morning, Dan and Amy. Well, Trump is back on the rally circuit. He's suggesting that he's going to do these rallies like he did in Nashville last night. He hadn't done one in a few weeks, the previous one in Melbourne, Florida.
Yeah, that's right.
But he's saying he may do these every couple of weeks. And
It's a way. I mean, it's him at his best and it's him at his finest when he's in front of a crowd, I think.
well, it's not just about kind of him accentuating his own positives. It's also about selling component parts of his legislative agenda, right? I mean, he needs to get out there and market the Obamacare replacement, I should say, the repeal, but now the replacement that's been proposed in whatever altered form it may come out of the House and whatever additionally altered form it may come out of the House and Senate and conference committee when some version passes both chambers. He is not only the chief executive, not only the commander in chief, he's also the chief marketing officer for his agenda, and people want to hear from him. And I agree with you. I think when he gets out there, particularly as a populist-oriented candidate, by definition, you want to get out there in a rally format. You want people to see you. You want people to know that that you haven't forgotten about the people that put you in the Oval Office. And you need to make the case relentlessly for your proposals, particularly the ones that are controversial and still trying to be assimilated by the body politic at present, like the replacement for Obamacare.
And he said yesterday in Nashville, he said, when it came to the replacement of Obamacare, he said, if it doesn't go through, it's the Democrats' fault. And the crowd loved it, and they were cheering. But he needs to do that to energize his base and let them know that he's still, he has an agenda, and he's trying to stick to the campaign promises that he made.
Well, switching gears here, we've got a very special guest. You remember the controversy. This is, more than a decade ago, about a dozen years ago. 2005, a Danish cartoonist that did parody cartoons of Muslims, not Muslims in general, but Muslim terrorists, radical Islamic terrorists. And this created a firestorm. This was like the 21st century of Salman Rushdie's The Satanic Verses. The Danish cartoonist was targeted for death. There was an incident in Copenhagen, 6 or 7 years ago, where I believe he was at a book signing or some other public event for fans of his work, and the place was bombed, and people were injured. And now Flemming Rose, the cartoonist in question, has a new book. It's called The Tyranny of Silence, and we're pleased to be joined by Flemming Rose. Flemming, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.
So, and by the way,
I'm
sorry.
For the record, I'm not the cartoonist. I was the editor responsible for commissioning the cartoons and published them in the newspaper where I worked back then.
I'm sorry. The editor of the paper, not the cartoonist. Thank you for the correction. And the newspaper. Make sure I'm pronouncing this right. This the name of the newspaper? Jyllands-Posten. Okay. So what has been the reaction now that we're 12 years beyond the original protests over the original cartoons that were published in the JP and the incident in Copenhagen?
Well, I would say that in many ways Denmark has learned quite a lot from that debate. I think in many ways our debate is more free, more open than in other parts of the world. I just traveled around the U.S. I had an incident at a college in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where the protesters were putting forward some of the same criticism that we had in Denmark 11 years ago, but we don't talk about it anymore in that way. I think that people have come around to the fact that those cartoons were published for a reason, and criticizing religion and that violence is being committed in the name of the Prophet Muhammad or Islam doesn't mean that you target Muslims as a group. On the other hand, in Denmark right now, we have a pending blasphemy case. For the first time in 46 years, the blasphemy law seems to be put into action because a citizen burned a copy of the Quran. Of course, our outrageous act. I do not applaud it, but I think it's protected speech. He burned that copy of the Quran in his backyard and put a short video of it on his Facebook page. And now he is being taken to court for blasphemy. It's the first case in 46 years. And it's important in this context to say that in 1997, a Danish artist burned a copy of the Bible, not on a private Facebook page, but on Danish national broadcasting TV. And he was not prosecuted for blasphemy. So there seems to be a double standard, or the government feels intimidated by the kind of new world we are living in, globalization, the forces of digital technology, migration, problems with integrating Muslims, the presence of Islam in Europe, and so on and so forth.
So, Flemming, people almost died or could have died because you allowed those cartoons to be published. Taking a step back decades later, do you think it was worth it?
I do not regret having commissioned those cartoons. That was very relevant in the context when it happened. On the other hand, I don't think that any cartoon is worth a single human life. The challenge for you as an editor and as a journalist is when other people believe it's okay to kill because of a cartoon. What do? Do you bow in? Do you cave in and thereby sending a very unfortunate signal to those who are committing violence and basically say to them, if you threaten us enough, if you intimidate us enough, if you commit enough violence, we will do exactly as you please. And that would imply, well, just go on because it works. On the other hand, if I say, well, we have to publish cartoons every day until the moment when people get used to it, a lot of people will believe that I think that I'm crazy. So it's a real dilemma. But in the context back then, it made perfectly sense as a way to push back against self-censorship and put focus on the way we are treating and dealing with Islam in Denmark and Western Europe. Do we censor ourselves? Do we exercise double standards, triple standards, and so on and so forth?
How did the massacre at the Charlie Hebdo offices change the way Western European media addresses the issue you're describing?
It changed dramatically, and we had an attack in Copenhagen a month after the Charlie Hebdo attack where 2 people were killed. It means that in Europe today we have an unwritten blasphemy law. Even though many countries, Denmark still do have a blasphemy law, but the majority of countries in Europe do not have active blasphemy laws. Nevertheless, no publication, in spite of a long tradition of religious satire, they do not publish cartoons, drawings, content that may be perceived as criticizing, ridiculing, or mocking Islam.
Hold on. So the reaction. So to you set up the question of the choice you have to make, and the reaction to the Hebdo massacre and to the attack in Copenhagen is to go towards self-censorship. It's to go.
Absolutely, that's the case.
Back down.
Killed, and therefore, I understand the fear, but we have to be aware of the fact that by censoring ourselves, we do pay a price. And I don't think that people should publish these kind of cartoons as some kind of activism. But I think when people were killed in Paris or in Copenhagen or in other parts of the world, as news media, you have an obligation to print them. It reads on the top of the New York Times all the news that fit to print, as far as I remember. And when this is in the news, I think you should show your readers, and then they can make a decision for themselves what to think about it. Publication does not mean endorsement, and you can write an editorial criticizing a decision to publish those cartoons in the first place. But I think it's very unfortunate that you do not publish newsworthy cartoons, and thereby you're treating your audience as if they are not mature enough to handle a situation like that.
But aren't cartoons supposed to be funny, or is it just provocative? I mean, you were.
Well,
is that an eye of the
Hornet's Nest.
beholder question?
Are very different, and it's the sense of provocation or humor or laughing is always in the eyes of the beholder. What is funny for you may not be funny for me. Humor is really depending on context. And if you take the 12 cartoons we published, they were very different in the ways they were depicting the prophet and in whom they target for satire. In fact, out of 12 cartoons, only 3 depicted the prophet. And all of them were not in a ridiculing or funny way, as you say. But it's all in the eyes of the beholder, and this changes with time and across cultures. If you take Edouard Manet, French impressionist painter who made a very famous painting, Lunch on the Green Grass, where you have a naked woman sitting in the forest and 2 men joining her. That painting today is seen as a world masterpiece, an expression of harmony. But back then, in the middle of the 1900s, when it was exhibited the first time, people attacked the exhibition and tried to destroy the painting because they found it very provocative. Very few people would see it as a provocation today, and it's the same with cartoons and other images.
What happened to you? And we know some of what happened to the cartoonist who actually whose work you published. I guess 2 questions to combine them. Where is that cartoonist now? Is he still in hiding? Is he still the subject of death threats? And what about you in the wake of the publication of those cartoons and then present day?
Yeah, I mean, 11 years later, Kurt Westergaard, the cartoonist who made a cartoon of the prophet that bombed in his turban, and we are on a hit list created by the Islamic State and Al Qaeda. So we live with security around the clock. Everywhere I travel in Denmark and in Europe, I have security, and so does he. He's retired now. He's more than 80. He's, I think, 82 years old now. So he is enjoying his otium while I'm still working.
And your book, The Tyranny of Silence, I'm guessing that the reaction to Western Europe to the cartoons and the controversy, the indulgence of people who respond to content they don't like through violence and threats is not something that you support as the appropriate reaction.
No, not at all. But I mean, what I took away from the cartoon crisis is you can have very different opinions about this, and I do not insist that my perspective is the right one. I'm just trying to lay out, if you have my history, if you grew up in Denmark, if you met the people and read the books that I did, then it makes sense to defend the right to publish these things. People in other parts of the world may be of other opinions, but I'm just describing what happened and analyzing the history of tolerance of free speech across cultures and time.
Well, I understand your reticence to to make a definitive statement and your respect for people who may disagree, but doesn't that respect end at the point of your nose? I mean, where does this go if you start from
not at the point of your nose, but I think, I mean, I believe in a very I believe in free speech. I'm a strong supporter of the First Amendment in the U.S., and I think that people should have a right to speak their mind as long as they do not infringe upon other people's rights. And that means incitement to violence. It means some protection of your privacy, and it also means a narrowly defined libel law, I think. But otherwise, people should have a right to say whatever they want. And I think in today's world, a lot of people do believe that they have a right not to be offended, but that's not the case. I think the understanding of the harm principle is too wide. So a lot of people feel that if I criticize their religion, I infringe upon their right to freedom of religion. That's not the case. I mean, they can go to the mosque or to the church or to a temple whenever they want, or the synagogue. It's not infringing upon their right to freedom of religion. It's just insisting on the right to criticize ideas and belief systems. And I think that's, in fact, part of the reason why the West has been so successful historically, that we have developed this right to free inquiry, and the right to criticize religion that for a long time served as the political, cultural, and social foundation of power in Europe is very essential.
Well, that was very well stated, and we're in complete agreement about the First Amendment and about natural rights like the freedom to express yourself. So it seems to me that requires, on the other side, a clear condemnation of people who react barbarically to opinions they disagree with, that it is not enough to ignore the content. It is not enough to respond to the content with more content. They want to eliminate the content producer. And that's where it's just baffling to me that so many in Europe, and frankly, some in our country, they're unwilling to make that next statement of moral clarity.
Exactly. I mean, you have to meet speech that you don't like with more speech, not trying to ban it or not trying to use violence and intimidation to silence it. It's as simple as that. And I think it boils down to the fact that in today's world there is a misunderstanding of the concept of tolerance. People believe that it's intolerant to publish cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. The intolerance is, in fact, being exercised by those who use violence and try to shut down and ban these kind of cartoons. And that is a very widely held misunderstanding that has been cultivated in the educational system and in society at large for a long, long time.
In your book, The Tyranny of Silence, you talk to dissidents from the former Soviet Union. You talked to Muslims living in Europe. What were the insights gleaned from those conversations on this topic?
I mean, my experience in the Soviet Union goes way back, and it informs my approach to free speech in general. I lived in a totalitarian dictatorship for a while, and I met people with that kind of experience. When it comes to Muslims or former Muslims, the key insight is that do not look at Muslims as if they are a unified group. I mean, there are always the most important minority is the individual, and within Muslim communities there are individuals who have great difficulties exercising their rights as women, as non-believers, as people who do not accept the dominating consensus within their own community in one way or the other, and that's the minority that we have to stand up for.
He is Flemming Rose, former editor of the Danish paper that published these cartoons that created such controversy some 12 years ago now. And the book is The Tyranny of Silence, The Tyranny of Silence by Flemming Rose. Flemming Rose, thanks so much for joining us. Good luck with the book and stay safe.
And thank you for having me. Have a good day.
You too. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.